All right, so I just started the recording. Good morning. We're back from our spring break. And like I said, I hope you guys, had a really good one. Um, at least some break. I did go through that eye surgery, so I'm doing the best I can with the good eye for the next week or so till that one heals. But I think, yeah, everything looks good, and I've got everything posted over here. I just want to show you that I decided to do a topic that was a little different because I've been through so much over the break that I needed to bring something in that I had done before. And and I think that this is a really cool topic to start with, architects, all that they've done, each one affecting the outcome of all of our different styles that we have in life. And just think about all of those people that have made big uh, swings in our architectural styles that we've been working with. So this presentation has a variety of different architects in it that some are famous, some are not so famous. And when you look at architects, a lot of them didn't really become famous until after their 50s, right? They're working, and then all of a sudden they do something. They get enter a competition like Daniel Libeskind. I didn't even know of him until he entered the competition for the World Trade Center. And all of a sudden, everybody, because he won, everybody knows him, and he's getting more recognition, and all of his work comes to life, right? Kind of thing. So during our first half, we saw a few architects and saw that they were builders and sculptors and philosophers, and they weren't really called architects or really recognized until a little bit later in life. And what they mean, they were definitely important, like Imhotep and some of the early Egyptian architects, but also over time, we follow what is going on in life, right? So the Industrial Revolution, some of them embraced the high tech kind of machine age, and some of them like detested it and went a different direction. And that's what's happening right now, really. When you look at different architects of this time as well, you kind of pick up something that you enjoy early on or that you're passionate about. And depending on what clients you get, because that's a big thing, you have to find the clients. That's the big discussion amongst architects, is finding a client that will say, go ahead and do whatever you want to do, right? Instead of somebody who brings you a project and says, I want to do this exactly, and then you can tweak it a little bit. So taking a look at what we're doing this week, I believe it's week 8 for us, but don't take that for all the other classes, because we had Labor Day. Labor Day weekend, when we first started the semester, we didn't have a class, but the rest of the week did. So at the end of the semester, we still have one more Monday after that last week of classes. I'm not going to have an actual class on campus that day, which I believe is May something. Let me take, it's like, it's May 5th, I think it is. So what we'll do is something online instead of, coming in that day. This is a hybrid class, by the way. So technically, hybrid classes meet every other week, or 50%, depending on what the professor wants to work with. So anyways, I just wanted to point out to you that in this week, March 10th, we're going to be taking a look at the architects that are out there through time. And then we're going to have this assignment 12 has this bank of questions. Oh, let me see if I still have it open. Right. So it has just the architects that we're working with, and you pick up, it's like a matching game, right? A little bit, where you take these architects that we're talking about and you kind of like plug them in. Now you could use it digitally and just plug in the architects, or you can just tell me 1 through 15, this is the list of architects that are in this document. You can print it, you can whatever, however you want to put that in there and then post it for that one. These are the architects that we're going to be working with. And then that's for assignment 12. And then assignment 13 is a little bit different. Assignment 13 is a discussion group. Sometimes I like to change it up a little bit. So sometimes we're working online in the same shared file. Sometimes we have a discussion group, a list of things that we're going to coordinate together. And that's what this is here. So someone already put their architect in there. What I'm looking for is someone who we have not talked about and someone who none of the other students are using. This is an architect that you're going to research and create a couple, 1 or 2 pages of, similar to the document that I'm going through today. So I'm going to read this so you know this is like your architect. In the discussion group, you will decide an architect to document and post the name of the architect here by picking reply. To avoid duplicating presentations. That means we don't want to have like 2 people doing the same architect. So we get like this variety. You're not posting your, oh yeah, you are. Wait, is that what this is? Good question. Yeah, I guess you would. You would then, hmm, I, let me see here. Yeah, I don't use these for assignments that often, but I don't think you can post it like an assignment over in the modules.
You
And-
could put reply, we can post our PowerPoint as a reply.
Yeah, a reply to yourself.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that might be a good way to do this, guys, where you're replying now with the architect, so everybody can just, or not like this instant, because you have to make sure that it's not an architect that we're covering in class in the presentation, or one that someone else has done. If you know somebody and you're really passionate about it, you can go ahead and put it in there. But I think to post your presentation, you can pick reply under your own name so that it stays in that thread. Does that sound right?
Mhm.
And then that way we don't have like a lot of posts. We can just keep it together. I probably need to write that in here right now, but let me read it. So in this discussion group, you will decide on an architect to document and post the name of the architect here to avoid duplicating presentations. So don't go out and spend a whole lot of time documenting an architect and then post it, right? You want to put the name of it there so everybody can see it. Make sure you refresh, because probably some people are, yeah, see if you, now that is an architect that I think we're covering today. Well, maybe not. You have to take, yeah, I think we do have him in the presentation. So that's why you'll have to take a look. Let me see. Keep your, well, maybe I don't have him in here. I have him in my other presentation. Is he in here? There he is, right there. So pick somebody who, and if you already posted somebody that's in the presentation, then just reply to yourself. Because I think that each student should keep all their stuff together so we don't have a bunch of different things. Okay. Use any architects of all time that we didn't cover in the classroom presentation or that other students are using. This works, right? Create 1 or 2 page document with information about the architect and their best architectural design, like their thoughts, their directions. It is preferred for you to use a PowerPoint, but Word or other files that I can open are acceptable. Enjoy learning about architects that shaped our world from the past and present. So I think I need to edit this and put here. Let's see, to avoid post the name of that. Then post your assignment by replying to yourself to keep everything within your post. That kind of makes sense? Do you think? Yeah. Yeah. Right there. So now then post your assignment by replying to yourself to keep everything within your post. So if you accidentally posted someone who we already talked about, because we haven't talked yet today, I probably shouldn't have opened this till the end of the class, but I thought I'd like just get it all out at the beginning. You can repost repost in your by replying to yourself the new name. So even if you put something and you see somebody else's, we're just all gonna work together on this one. All right. Whoa. Okay. So we got a lot of architects in here. Now, just guys, make sure that the architect that you're posting isn't something that's in the PowerPoint, because we don't want to have like a double post, right? This is not the one that okay, yeah, I guess I'll just go ahead and open it up. Make sure that I've got the right one open that I posted. I didn't change anything, but I just want to make sure. Okay. All right. So if you take a look at, and I'm looking at all the slides, basically now I'm looking at all the slides. Up until Zaha Hadid, right there, slide 32. All of those from 1 to 32 are the different architects. Well, some of them are just photos, the different architects that we're going to be talking about. But when you think about it, there are a lot of architects out there over the time. Even now, think about just so many in the whole world, right? So, um, you know, everyone will find something about the different architectural styles that we've been working with. And then the last set of slides is it's showing architects, sure, firms mostly, the direction of what these architecture firms are doing as we're moving forward, like your architects, but it doesn't say anything about an individual architect. Now, the project that I did when I was at Lawrence Tech, I had a whole year of history of architecture, 3 different semesters. And the project that we did was we compared 2 architects. We compared them and we kind of analyzed how they were similar and different. But I think just going through and learning about the different architects and focusing in on one for now, and let's see how it goes for the rest of the semester. Uh, right. So, hey, and this is not something, just so you know, thank you for telling me this. This is just so you know, this is not something you have to do like right now, right? If you're on the road and you're just listening with your phone, because I've taken a lot of meetings and listened to a lot of presentations just by using my phone in the car on my way to somewhere. So that none of this are things that you need to do like right now. This is under March 10th. We're gonna talk about architects. You can fill out this quiz assignment 12 and 13 totally on your own in the next week, preferably. Okay, any questions about any of that? Just, questions. You're doing a check on me to make sure that you understand everything that I'm saying. And if you don't, I appreciate that you guys ask. Claire? Good, good. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Okay, and if it wasn't, yeah, I'm open, I'm an open professor that likes to make sure everybody's on track. All right. So, well, if I do that, you're gonna see all the slides. So we're going to take a look at a few architects that were of, an earlier time, but then quickly get into the top architects of all time. Le Corbusier, Mies van der Rohe, and Frank Lloyd Wright. Those 3 there's several books out there. They're like the master architects, and people will argue that out. And they're like, who calls them? Why did they make it significant? Now, Albert Kahn and Frank Lloyd Wright are both significant architects in the United States, and especially Albert Kahn here in Michigan, industrial architecture with the cars and everything that we have here. But like I said, across the board, there are a lot of people that have influenced our design and world. Because think about it, we're living in this built environment, and as much art as we can bring into our environment, the better for me. I know there are a lot of sayings about that, but that's so true. So I'm gonna go quickly here, with the, like, the older, earlier architects. Let me see here. I think I need to swap this out. Now, we started to talk about a couple of these, but this kind of like puts, here's all four of these in one slide. Like Emotep, which is considered to be the first engineer slash architect, um, and a lot of other things, sculptor, known during that Egyptian time. We talked a little bit about that earlier for the Egyptian architecture during like 2600 BC. And then Vitruvius, we said, was that architect that had a lot of writing and really influenced getting things documented, and also an architect slash engineer. Alberti, did we talk about Alberti? I think another architect slash, yeah, I think during that Renaissance time, a philosopher, and that was the person, that was the architect that did the Universal Man. Um, Leonardo da Vinci, that whole time period was all about mm, architecture as it related to the human body. And we started to see a lot of perspective drawing and kind of looking at things in 3D. Brunelleschi was also the famous architect that did that double dome that we looked at during that Renaissance time. And so these we kind of covered a little bit. These are these are like paintings and little sculptures that are of them, right? Leonardo da Vinci was really influential for us because of all the things we talked about, a lot of engineering kind of things that he came up with that other architects made happen. That famous Universal Man painting of proportions, like from the nose, your nose to the end of your finger is 3 feet, that kind of thing. Palladio, we didn't say a lot about him, but Italian Renaissance architect, very active. If you look at some of his architecture, actually, you probably could do him because I don't have, I mean, that is an architect. I'm gonna start writing these down as I'm talking to you. You probably, yeah, you could do Palladio because he did have some significant structures that, bless you, thank you, that helped us. They were influenced by the Roman and Greek architecture, primarily by Vitruvius. So you can see where they're all kind of connected, and that's what we're seeing during this time too. They meet each other, they go overseas, they talk, we learn from each other, and then beautiful works of art, architecture come out of that, these discussions. Widely considered the most influential architect in the history of Western architecture. So Palladio is somebody that you guys could do. Make sure that you refresh the discussion group so that you can see what everyone else is doing before you decide on spending a lot of work on one architect. Christopher Wren, there was a great fire in the city of London, and his designs were of several churches to kind of rebuild that, those cathedrals. So 55 churches, well, that's a lot during that time. Um, Adams also, an architect, mason. So there were a lot of masons, and they weren't just, architects. They had a lot of things that they were a part of, the philosophers and masons and uh, engineers. And so he designed numerous country houses and public buildings. I think that Adams could be another one on your list. In fact, I'm going to, as a suggestion, you could use that, the Adams style. I don't have a lot of his work in here and not a whole lot about him, but I think that researching Palladio or Adam might work if you don't have any other architect. I'd like to honestly see a lot more of the architects in your presentations that are that are a little bit later, like some within the last, 100 years or so since the Industrial Revolution too. But this is your choice. This is your choice. Now, Labrouste is famous for the engineering part of it, the steel that came out of the steam engine and different equipment and steel that was created. Uh, he started to work as an engineer on some of these important structures using the iron frame construction. And as you can see these pictures down here. Now, moving forward, because all of those architects are before, and they're exciting, but they're not as exciting for me. Honestly, we all have our own opinions about all of this, right? As an architect like Le Corbusier, we also refer to him as Corbu. These are the architects you really should know about. Um, you don't have to know every detail of their life, but they are kind of top architects in our profession. A Swiss French architect and painter, art. He actually had a lot of artists that were friends, and famous for this modern architecture, also called an international style, with a lot of these little things like that ribbon window that is streamlined. You didn't see that before. It was mostly all punched in windows, uh, or this kind of modern, white look that didn't have a lot of added decoration, like especially, remember the Baroque and the Rococo, all that added decoration, this is all out. So Le Corbusier set some new standards in our design. In fact, his design helped us to realize this open plan. So because he brought this industrial image into housing, it took the walls down for us. The old country homes, and they had all these compartmental rooms. So yeah, if when you sit in your kitchen and look out to, your dining room and living room and this open plan, he's a big influence on all of that. And I spent a lot of time and at least one day at this Villa Savoye in France when I lived there. Just kind of walking around, like this was a new thing at that time to be able to drive under your car, drive your car under your house and park there, and a couple of other kind of the 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 idea that it's streamlined and box, but also curves and art, and it was dramatic at that time. And even now, I really like his work, to be honest. See that little box right there? I think I mentioned it before. There's like a little hole, punched out hole there, because when you sit on the other side and you look through that, it's like a frame that you're framing the countryside with. So it kind of like gives you that picture frame up there. Anyways, art was specifically dependent upon spatial relationships. He believed that the work of art had an impact upon its surroundings, giving it a life and an action uniquely of its own. Within the broad scope of his work, painting and architecture cross boundaries to describe a new way of seeing and valuing space. So this is that domino house study. Can you imagine, like, really just the idea of having a house that looked like this? I'm sure it got a lot of ridicule. That's what happens when somebody comes out with something that's new and exciting, and there are a lot of naysayers and critics that they're like, well, there's no way we could have a house like that. But that was the study that he did to develop this new format for houses in a way. Uh, Also known as Corbu, became with his floor slabs and then this floating house on these posts, freestanding posts. Um, and design this openness of interior space and cantilevering of floor slabs. So Corbu and Frank Lloyd Wright actually met each other over in Europe and kind of influenced each other in a little bit of ways. So this was my project in school at Lawrence Tech. Like I said, I did a year of history over there, was to study the difference and similarities between Corbu and Wright, and it was very interesting to take a look. But I love this saying right here at the bottom left. This I think I had this on a couple of things in my life. You employ stone, wood, and concrete, and with these materials, you build houses and palaces. This is construction. Ingenuity is at work, but suddenly you touch my heart, you do me good. I'm happy, and I say, this is beautiful. This is architecture, and art enters in. So kind of sums it up for us, and that you can have all this material, but when you turn it into some kind of really beautiful art, it becomes, architecture. So these are some of his early paintings and studies of different houses in this kind of box form, but he also, during his lifetime, like architects change over. Can you imagine like an architect that's 80 years old? They've gone through all these different styles and different ways of looking at the environment and architecture. And so he, throughout his life, in the 40 years later, he's doing these kind of really sculptural, artistic churches and buildings that define that box. See the difference between these two? You can see within about 40 years, or not 30 years, there's a little bit of a change in that, which is good, instead of keeping the same thing throughout your whole life. All right, Mies van der Rohe, Mies, also Mies. Now he grabbed this industrial type of architecture and said, let's expose the structure. Okay. So everything was covered up until now. And so let's take this steel beam and put it on the outside and really just expose it. And so he's this German architect during the modern time, a pioneering master, influenced for sure the architectural style with this freedom of free-flowing open spaces, which is, during that same time, Corbu was working with that too. But, he came up with terms like skin and bones, where you show the structure, you show like the bones of the building. And but he also influenced us in a way to say that God is in the details and less is more. So I myself personally love this whole idea as God is in the details, because you can design an entire building, but the building itself has all these little details that make up the whole, right? So if you design a building that has just the envelope of it, and the interior designer or whoever is going to do all of the details that are inside of it does a completely different thing, then it kind of throws off the whole thing. So details make a difference. And no matter what team I've been on, every phase of the project, every detail of the project, all the details make up the whole. And I think that some people go away from that idea. Um, have you ever walked into a waiting room for like a doctor's office and you see this very cool detail, like a little alcove or a little ceiling detail? It just kind of pulls it all together. Anyways, so he attempts to create neutral spaces through an architecture based on material honesty and structural integrity. The Farnsworth House, I don't know if I have, let me see if I have it. No. The Farnsworth House was something that he designed. And look, it's really just kind of this open plan with glass. This house was owned by an individual, and luckily they didn't change it. But when it went on the market, historians and historical societies, foundations were concerned. So it went on the market for, I think, $14 million. Hey, hi. There's a sign-in sheet right here. You just gotta get to it there. So, somebody look this up if you have a minute. I think this Farnsworth house went for like, I don't know, was it 14 million? No.
7.5.
7.5, thank you. $7.5 million because Mies was such an influential architect that historical societies and foundations wanted to preserve it. Did you say 7.5? I knew it was big, 7.5 million.
Yeah.
Right, $1 million for this house because of its influence in architecture over time. So there are structures that have been maintained to kind of remind us of where, where those big influential waves were. He also took that material and created different structures with a variety of materials, like this Barcelona pavilion, which has concrete and marble and all these different materials that are all natural materials brought into a pavilion. And so we see this use of material in a more artistic way. Yeah. There is an architecture, really prominent architecture building right here. It's in the south side of uh, Chicago. I thought about going to school here actually. MIT, I think it's called. Wait, IIT. It's designed by Mies van der Rohe. I walked through it because I was looking at different architecture schools to go to. It was in a really bad neighborhood, so I was going on my own, and I was like, but uh, but it is that exposes structure, Mies van der Rohe design. But look, in Detroit, we also have the Lafayette Towers, which were designed by Mies. And in fact, this chair, which goes for thousands of dollars, and I think I'm going to be getting to a slide there. Those chairs are in the lobby of these Lafayette Towers in Detroit. There in this residential district. Okay, Frank Lloyd Wright. And any one of these architects, if they're interesting to you, I would encourage you to, go find out more about them if you would like to, take a little walk through history with them. Frank Lloyd Wright, definitely most influential and noticed in America. I mean, my mom even knows who Frank Lloyd Wright is, which is like, what she people that are not architects have potentially heard of of Frank Lloyd Wright as one of the masters of architecture in America, American architect, interior designer, because he did a lot of built-in furniture in his designs as well, his chairs and furniture and stained glass and earrings. Yeah, I have Frank Lloyd Wright earrings and little like glass windows. Prominent or promoted organic architecture. Organic architecture now brought the materials into the landscape and kind of blended the structures into the landscape. I went to Falling Waters last summer. All these years I've been wanting to get there, and I've studied it and I've looked at all the details, and I should bring in some pictures. I'll bring in some pictures that I took. Falling Waters, great road trip, guys. The the details in this building are amazing. Like a big boulder that's coming out of the hillside into the house, and the window is designed around the boulder. So the boulder's like half in the house and half out. When I came home from this Frank Lloyd Wright building, Falling Waters, it's in Pennsylvania. Great. Yeah, yeah. I wanted to just buy a boulder and put it in my living room. I didn't, but my students were like, I was telling my students about this beautiful boulder I was looking at. It was like $600. And they're like, their mouths dropped. They're like, what? For like for a stone. And then everybody now, like not everybody, but a lot of students are like, did you get your boulder yet? And they're sending me pictures of boulders. It's funny. Anyways, there was also a style, a prairie style of a house that had these big cantilevered uh, roof overhead and really long design, but still organic architecture. But you can see the cantilevers right here. You see over the water. There's a lot that to be said about, right? And I couldn't do it all like in the short time. So you could do a whole lecture on just any one of these three or all of these architects, honestly. So the concept of the Usonian house, and there are books about the Roby house and the Usonian architecture. They kind of follow with right. Recognized in 1991 by the American Institute as the greatest American architect of all time. He creates organic architecture that relates harmoniously to its natural surroundings. He favored the cantilever along projection. The thing happens, the thing always happens that you really believe in, and the belief in the thing makes it happen. This is one of his famous quotes. But if you go online and take a look at Wright quotes, there are so many, but that's one that kind of caught to me was, it wouldn't hurt to, if you can find a quote of the architect that you're studying, it'd be nice to kind of see what their like famous quotes are. That'd be kind of a cool document, to be honest. Okay. Uh, Alvar Aalto also really dove into organic architecture and integrated process. My furniture has really, if ever, come about as separate designs. So uh, chairs, furniture that integrated and even built in furniture that kind of picks up the whole thing and carries it all the way through from the landscaping all the way down to the smallest of details. It's almost without exception created as part of an architectonic whole. In other words, to go with my architecture. So it makes sense, right? You design the envelope and you do a lot of studies on the site to decide on that design. So why stop there? A lot of projects happen like that. But to take it all the way through to the smallest of details to enhance the entire design. And you can see that he's very creative in the use of material and the organic architecture and like the curves and bringing art to architecture, but more importantly, all the way through to the furniture. Now, Venturi, him and his wife, Denise Scott Brown, had this idea of taking what's already been done and kind of like breaking it apart and creating something new. So he called for an architectural tension, both and style, both form and meaning. He developed or created a book called Complex Contradiction Architecture. The book is called, did I say it? No, it's in my office. It's Complexity. I think it's Complexity and Contradiction. What was his books? What was his book called? Anybody want to look that up? Complexity and Contradiction in Architecture. Complexity and Contradiction in Architecture. So you see, thank you. You see how he took like a house that we just kind of have this basic house design with the gable end. And he took every part of that house and kind of changed it in a different way. He looked at it, said, we can make this a little bit more artistic and kind of tweak it. And you end up with this kind of split of the gable with symmetry, but not like some things are symmetrical and some are asymmetrical. So you got like windows on this side that are different from windows on this side. I wonder, I gotta see, what is this link? I'm sorry. Oops. I just wanna see if this link. All right, what is this link for?
It's his firm's website.
Oh, his firm. Okay, I'm not gonna go there, but that is, bless you. Oops. That is his firm's, website. If you wanted to take a look. In fact, honestly, guys, okay, I have to tell you. When you are looking at these architects, whether it's in the presentation, that you're putting together or just looking at them, if you want to learn a lot about what direction you want to take or about picking up portfolio design, go to the architect's website. Take a look at their gallery, take a look at their portfolio, take a look at the way that the website is set up. That's going to help you I think it will help you to gather information for your own portfolio design. And this is how I figured out the directions I wanted to take when I was looking at where I wanted to work. During school, I worked purposefully during the summer at different types of architecture firms so that I knew, kind of had an idea when I graduated where I wanted to go. Like, so there's design firms, there are firms that are more construction, the larger firms, smaller firms. I ended up wanting to work with a firm that was about 40 people because you can still have smaller teams, but you can have enough projects that it's going to be sustainable, right? A small company that I worked with in John Hillberry and in Detroit, we were like 7 or 8 people. We did a bunch of designs and churches. It was awesome. But the owners decided to, the lawyer and the woman, his wife was a lawyer and he was the famous architect that actually taught at Lawrence Tech, and they decided to sell their company and buy a camper and go travel the world, which is good. But here I am, like, okay, now, but that's okay. I'm just saying that smaller firms that you can learn a lot and you can work on awesome projects. The larger ones, you could get kind of pigeoned into a certain type, like schools. You're gonna be doing schools for a long time. But what I like about larger firms, like the one I worked with in Chicago, they had small teams. So look for the larger firms that have small teams. Then you get like a little bit more experience there. So look at those websites, take a look at, what they're doing and how it's laid out. Let me get back on track with with Robert Venturi. Here's one of his sayings: it can include elements that are both good and awkward, big and little, closed and open, continuous and articulated, round and square, structure and spatial. So this kind of like push-pull of different directions in geometry and space and materials, kind of to make something from the past kind of new, right? Okay. And Michael Graves was really well known, and still is, because he did a lot of documentations on other architects or on his own. He was on PBS a lot. He's got a huge amount of books, so he's put himself out there and worked with this postmodernist movement, which we haven't talked about yet, but after the modern movement, people looked at decorating or decoration of that streamline architecture. So kind of like this Portland building was one of his most famous, where he took this streamlined kind of modern ribbon window and see how he punched out the windows and he kind of added ornamentation to the building. And so many people were critical of it. We have a couple of postmodern architecture buildings in Detroit. But I think I'm gonna be getting to that in our research, but here's Swan Hotel in Disney World. A lot of architects like to design for Disney World. Why? Because they can be more creative, right? Museums, art, anything art related or like amusement parks like this, you can go a little bit more out of the box. His work has diverted the evolution of urban architecture away from modernist abstraction. So the modernist abstraction of absolutely nothing, like white with the ribbon windows, like we saw in the beginnings of a Corbu work, now has the beginnings of more contextual and traditional themes. So you can go to Michael Graves' website and take a look at some of his things as well. And then Frank Gehry. Frank Gehry, I mean, I admire him. I think what he did later in life was do I have more than one of his? Yeah, I do have like two of his. But his house was what gave him a lot of recognition. I should have that in here too. He took um he took metal decking and like cyclone fence and he added it with different materials on in his house design with different angles to create a house that was more an artwork. And that's what he's doing here with his sculptural artistic flair kind of added to the typical architecture that we saw before this time. So you see there's a brick building right there, but it's not, the lines of that brick building are not straight. They're all either tilted a little or curved with this other material coming in as an artistic expression. This is a building that I visited. It's in Cleveland, so it's easy to get to. It's like a law building. It's kind of cool to go on road trips and go take a look at some of this architecture that's really close to us and kind of walk around it, see the different angles. Because can you imagine walking down the street? You see things in a different way every step that you take. So I walked completely around. This is the picture that I believe I might have taken this picture, but he believes that architecture is primarily an artistic endeavor, a question of the qualities of material and form, which means that his risk revolved around the architectural possibilities of unexplored shapes and untried materials. This is all him right here, unexplored shapes and untried materials, which is awesome because the brick curved so much, guys, that they had to scan it just almost daily to make sure that the structural integrity was still in place. It was a real like work of art, to be honest. Yeah. Some people don't really like his architecture because he just kind of ignores the um the site and all the buildings around it. He kind of like he designs for something that can be plopped anywhere and regardless of what there. So there were a couple of cities that encouraged his architecture to come to them so they could have a focal point because their cities were so bland and without any kind of creative design. And so his building became the city, right? All right. So if you watch he made a documentation, a documentary. It's called Sketches of Frank Gehry. I still have the CD in my office, but I'm sure you can find the movie. It's called Sketches of Frank Gehry. There are a couple of different scenes in there where he's just like taking this model and he's cutting it with scissors and he's ripping it. And of course, he's got all his team there that are actually applying it. And he's just telling them what to do, but they're like folding paper and putting it up against a box and it actually becomes architecture. Or he has these really good like napkin sketches that are just kind of line diagrams of a sketch that become buildings. And so one of the things that I admired for him saying in one of his videos was how hard it is to get started. I use this in my design classes sometimes where, think about this blank sheet of paper and you're trying to come up with a design. And that he's talking about how, and this is true, that's the hardest part. The hardest part is to pick up that pencil and start being creative. Like he talks about how we procrastinate, we gotta do everything else, but once you like push through to start your designs, it it starts to get better. Okay, so again, this huge fish building and other things that are a little bit more sculptural. He hung out a lot with our artists, kind of follow that world as well. Peter Eisenman, he's been a really big influence in deconstructionist architecture. There are a lot of different styles we haven't come to yet, but deconstructionist architecture pretty much took any building and just exploded it. This is the best way to describe it. Explode it, bring it back, and bring it back and put it together a different way. So his designs created a pattern that is knocked away from equilibrium with the dialect of opposition in architecture. He was the lead in a loosely knit group of New York architects called the New York Five, deconstructionist architecture. I'm going to show you some really great ideas of this deconstructionist architecture as well, but this is one of the auditoriums that he worked with. Here it is. Here, how many more slides there? I think this is it. So it's the beginning of this deconstruction using these digital images. This was early on, guys. This is like before we even saw this explosion of digital and sculptural breaking apart of what we knew was the house or a building out in the box. Oh, he has some really great books on houses that he designed that kind of push out of normal. Like, I'll just tell you one thing that I kind of admired is that he made a floor that had a strip that was about a foot wide of glass that had water running underneath it. So in your house, you're walking through and you have these glass open floor to the water, which I thought was pretty cool, honestly. So you see how this atrium that's coming through is not perfectly square to the boxes? So it's kind of like the angle is off a little and the heights change, and there's that fight between geometry that is kind of being explored here. And this is one of his also one of his other creations. I know this, I said under construction, but I'm sure that it's done there. But you can see that the forms follow the landscape. You see, this is a model of how the landscape kind of becomes the architecture, and all of the windows have this kind of these different panes because it has something that's sliced through. So I think it was pretty significant, and this huge development in Spain. This is the digital a world coming in at early time now, and all there. Showing how the land comes up and over and the buildings underneath the topography of the ground and kind of blends in with it. Honestly, it's beautiful to me. These are other pictures of it and how it's kind of rolling with the land. See, you don't see like roofs like this that kind of sweep down and curve, and there's a person up here because it's like concrete coming up to the building like that. So I think it's incredible when we take a box. Wait, okay, this must be an image that's, okay. So this is how it's developed. kind of he's rolling with the landscape and working with the site. You can see that the windows even kind of blend in with the curve there. All right, Daniel Liebenskin. Liebenskin, like I said, wasn't even, I didn't know of him until he entered a competition. Competitions can get you noticed if you are in the top, ones, and even if you're not. I've encouraged my students, and there are a couple of students that have actually looked for competitions and used them in my classes. Just recently, in my Design 3 class, a student entered a competition. I found out what style that he was looking at for the competition, and I connected him with architects that I've worked with in the past, and he actually went to the architecture firm. Uh, I'm happy that he took that step. I introduced him to them, and now he's connecting with them. And then another student right now, are you in there? No, okay, you're not. Is working on a completely different independent competition that he's getting involved with, and we are, as a school, competing in the Skills USA competition that has a state competition every year in Grand Rapids. It's going to be April, I think, 11th, that weekend. And then the top person goes to nationals, which is in Atlanta, Georgia. If you're interested in that, let me know. We already have 4 people that are going this year, and the competition will be in April for the state, and then June or so. Anyone in here going to that competition with me? Yeah, I think Isabel.
Yeah.
Isabel is one of the 4 that's gonna do it. And the good thing about that competition, guys, is that there are not very many colleges that compete during the state competition. So most of the time, it's just I'll bring 3 or 4 students that are competing against themselves and getting the experience of it to see who goes to nationals, right? And so I think out of the almost 10 years that I've been advisor, maybe twice Ferris State competed against us. And so most of the time it's us. But it's a kind of a stepping stone to nationals, because when you get to nationals, you're like 35 different, schools that are from different states, yeah, that are pretty serious. But we've done pretty good. We've gotten up to 4th place in nationals, and I think it's because I've been a judge for both competitions. I wasn't judging our students, I was judging the high school students, right? So just for the record, there are thousands of high school students that go for the same competition, but they put you in a different category. So, and then there's probably about, I don't know, maybe 200 or so students from different states. So Daniel Liebenstein, going back to competitions, entered this World Trade Center design. It was pretty literal, like, the 2 towers, right? So that it was in his design, he designed it so that it was like the towers had fallen down, and the design was in this garden of different pieces that were designed under the deconstruction kind of theme. And it won first place. It didn't end up being completely like that, but he did have a big part of the museum, which is really awesome. I actually went back to it just a couple, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, to spend the whole afternoon in that park there. It doesn't look like that, but it's a beautiful space if you get a chance to go there. All right. So he actually taught architecture. A lot of architects teach architecture first. Cranbrook,
For a long time.
he did? Okay, so he taught at Cranbrook. I didn't know much about him until he went to the World Trade, they competed there, but
Right here, he was a director at the Cranbrook
Was he?
Academy of Art.
so he was in Cranbrook. I gotta write that down, because I can't know everything about all of them, and that's why we're all kind of like researching them and all the design. I can't like all the whole life of everybody, but the life of all of these architects is pretty interesting. So yeah, Cranbrook, that's really good. Cranbrook is a kind of an art school that's in what city? It's like a, huh? Bloomfield Hills, that's right.
Yeah.
When I went to Lawrence Tech, a lot of people came from there or had some
They're
kid.
really good private high school program, but the Academy of Art is actually it's a graduate school, and it's really unique.
Yeah, I walked through there several
So,
times.
I visited it, but
Did you?
here, I guess, they don't have courses
Oh.
there. They just bring in artists in residence and you just work with them. That's just what you do. Like, there's no classes, there's no courses.
It's pretty artistic. I know that it has a big, Cranbrook is very influential with art, designs. So Liebenskin without spiritual content and without a contribution to the deeper understanding of our being, there can be no significance in any building. So he really connected with the soul, right? So with the deep depths of the human soul, he does not search for a synthesis of solution. Rather, he tries consistently to intensify the mystery. Okay, Daniel Libeskind, and these are his proposals for the World Trade Center, which didn't make it through, but he definitely influenced a lot of part of it and stayed on the project of it. This is another building that he created, the ROM, 2007. This is when you look at this, think of deconstructionist architecture. You take this material and you create this kind of chaos, but organized and artistic. You've kind of exploded it, broken it up, and brought it back together in a different way. One of our projects at Lawrence Tech was to buy a model. You know those little kits that where you buy you put together a model that's like a model car, right? It used to be really popular. I did so many of those. That was like my first thing when I was a kid, like to put together a scenery that's Halloween or a model that was of a car. Did a lot of those. And we had to buy a model and we had to put all the pieces out on a board that we made with a handle. They called it a tabula rasa, which is like a clean slate. And every piece of that model needed to have a different meaning to it. So you couldn't use a tire of the model car as a tire. You needed to kind of think of how that tire could be used in a different way. Maybe a window, maybe a roof awning, or so it kind of like forced you to use our common things in life as something different. And that's part of what deconstruction is as well. Other architects that were significant to us, I forgot how to pronounce this this guy's name. Isozaki Rada. So So, oops, there's this nightclub called the Palladium. Palladium. That's right. I went to it when I went to New York for about a little over a week when I was in school, and the Palladium was just filled with all of these artistic different ways of looking at things. You could walk up a stair that has circles of glass that had light coming up from it, like a graded stair. So, another architect that brought art to architecture, boldness of form and color and careful detailing. Can you see that there's kind of like common theme, a little different? His shapes tend to evoke barrels and building blocks. Again, another chair that's done in a little different way. There's this art tower here and a couple of other, the Museum in Los Angeles of Contemporary Art. And something else down here that he worked with, and again, bringing in detail, color, form, and, art. All right, Albert Kahn, another huge architect in Michigan, specifically Detroit. So we've got Frank Lloyd Wright, national here, American, and this Albert Kahn. He became America's foremost industrial architecture. Well, everybody else was shying away from industrial architecture because it's not, glamorous and sculptural and art. He embraced it and sometimes called the architect of Detroit. There are a lot of buildings in Detroit that were influenced by him. At the age of 15, his life brightened. He got a job without pay. Without pay is the key. It's crazy because Eisenman and I interviewed with Eisenman and Stanley Tigerman in Chicago, and they were, and like I remember when I moved to Chicago, I needed to have money for my studio apartment, but they offered me a job, but I needed to do it without pay. But how do you do that unless you have somebody totally supporting you? But that you pay, get the job to get the experience. So that's why they think that they hire people without pay. Anyways, it becomes a great opportunity if you decide to do that. At this firm in Detroit, he worked with different designs, and some of them are local. The Ford Rouge complex. There's one on Van Dyke. That's the Chrysler Dodge plant in Warren. I think it's on Van Dyke and like, I don't know, 14 mile-ish, maybe, no, down more. Detroit Police Headquarters in the GM building. His architectural firm Kahn Associates is still based in Detroit. He died in 42. Kahn Associates is in Detroit. I've worked with a lot of people that are from there. And in fact, I have a friend who I went to school with that's still there. She's on my advisory committee. A lot of industrial architecture, but these are some of Kahn's projects. The GM building, which used to be where they were housed here, and then they moved into the Renaissance Center downtown, and now, do you know where they're going now? They
All
were,
of their stuff is at the tech center now.
they do have the tech center. But
Everything is at Tech Center.
is everything at the tech center?
I
Okay.
used to work for them.
Oh, did you? Okay, so you worked with Albert Kahn? Or no, you worked
I worked for GM.
GM, right? So there, the GM Tech Center, which is also a really great design, in Warren? I think it was.
Right
Yeah,
down the street.
yeah, really close. In fact, I went by it this morning. Maybe not. They were in this GM building that was designed there, and then they moved to the Renaissance Center, and now they're over in the GM Tech Center, which has always been there, and it has a lot. I've walked through that building. There are a lot of Kahn influences there. Just we created a lot of architecture renovations through some of his designs, and I was always going there to get drawings of as-built drawings of things that were already built because we did a lot of renovations there. But also the Fisher Building, very prominent building that Kahn designed. Here are some other things that you may not know. He worked with the Detroit Opera House restorations, the Conservatory of Belle Isle, Detroit. The architect I worked with in Detroit, John Hilberry, did a lot of the renovations on this building, so I was working on those drawings as well as these other restaurants and things that Kahn did. You can go to their website and take a look at some of the other architecture that's of that time. All right. Rounding things up here a little bit quicker, Robert Stern, he didn't do a whole lot of architecture, but he did have a lot of books and documentation, and he was He did the PBS series, postmodernist architect that also wanted to look at things in a little bit different ways, takes history to heart and creates buildings that express affections for the past. So kind of bringing back the past and still working with some of the current architecture. He's written and edited 24 books. I watched his whole entire PBS series of documentation because what he did was he created a, a documentation on PBS that would talk about architecture, not his architecture, a lot of other people's architecture, right? He would go to a building in in and like tell us about it, and then sometimes meet the architect if they were still, with us. So, but his own design, which was, I think, a lot smaller in scale, does reflect history and traditional architecture. Firm of 300 is currently in New York. So I'd have to double check to see if he's still here or anything, but that, yeah. Over in Paris, Bernard Tschumi, Tschumi, I think it's pronounced, was creating a lot of artistic sculpture. When I lived in Paris, I visited a lot of his sites and loved, the feeling of walking through this space here, this park. Rejection of the notion of synthesis in favor of the idea of disassociation. Another kind of break from traditional box and into more artistic flair, deconstructionist architecture. But now IMP, I have to say, is one of my favorites. And the reason I think I like his architecture, I watched there was a documentary about him, and he was in there talking about all his projects. He went to each one of the sites and talked to the person. I forget who actually created this movie, but it's worth it to watch his movie. An engineer, an architect. He designed this Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland, Ohio. If you get a chance to visit that, walk around it, walk inside of it. I spent some time in there. John Lennon, I think, was there. Um, this displays. So his buildings were more symbolic. And what I really liked about his architecture, without reading all of this, is that he would go to the site, he would look at everything that was happening all around. And his design, my opinion, kind of captured how to design something with the environment and the feeling of the site in mind. So watch that movie if you get a chance. Based on art, but also the foundation of necessity, or the surroundings. Look at the geometry. But that's this building, okay? But other buildings have different designs. He did the Louvre. Do I have that? No. Oh, I don't have it on a slide. He created the pyramid in the Louvre museum in Paris. I visited that several times too. When you look at it, somebody might not like it, some people like it, but you have all this rich history that's around it. So why create something that's gonna conflict with that? So the pyramid kind of sets it back, and because it's glass, and the pyramid itself has this is its own engineered system um, system frame that holds up the, the, the glass as well. All right, gosh, you could say a lot more about IMP, but go look at him. Maybe I'll talk about him later on. We'll see. Oh, he did create this glass type building that was fairly new at that time. Steel frame, curtain wall. And what I really liked about this when I visited it, look at the bottom left corner right there. You see this church? This is the one where I thought this was so beautiful. If you stand in front of this church and you look inside his building, you see a double of the church design. So it's reflection of the history in in this like mirrored vision. So standing in this plaza right here in Boston, I was set back at how beautiful that was, honestly, to see the reflection of the building and the other building. Now, the problem with this building right here, this is the story. The glass pane started to pop out.
Say, isn't it the one where
Yes,
they had to put up like plywood, right?
yeah. All the glass
Yeah.
panes started to pop out. Everybody pointed to him. It wasn't like a year later, they found out it was the window manufacturer.
Yeah.
That messed up, right? But by then, his name was out there. So, and so, you put your hands up and say, okay, it was the window manufacturer, but in his movie, you'll see that he's talking about how it really, he hurt his reputation at that time, but he was able to kind of like turn it around and say, hey, it wasn't me. I mean, if everything turned out right, and the window manufacturer did things right, I don't know if I would have to look at the details to see if the construction drawings had it. No, it pointed to the window manufacturer, but anyways, these kind of things happen. The same thing happened with, I think it was Frank Gehry created this building that had these curved uh, pieces that came out and were supposed to be overhangs. Well, the snow, because of the design, the snow sat on it and then it fell off. And it became an issue for people walking by. So you have to think about all of those things and what could happen or try to get all of those little things in there. One of my favorite female architects, Zaha Hadid, I almost cried when she passed just a few years ago. She really paved the way for women in architecture, although I'm sure that there are other people that did the same, like Venturi's wife, Denise Scott Brown. She was an architect on her own as well. But Zaha Hadid won a lot of competitions and the different, you can read all of this, define a new radical, new approach to architecture. You can see that it's very artistic and creative, a little bit of deconstruction in there, a lot of art in there. Okay. So very, very big influence for architecture in our time, women especially. Now, up until that point, those are all architects. The rest of the slides I'm going to go through fairly quickly. We're finishing up here. To show you architecture firms that are looking at architecture in a little bit different way. If you see anything here where you go back and find out the architect, you can work with some of these, but these are local. This one's in Ann Arbor, the museum, Michigan Museum of Art. Just wanted to show you architecture firms that are significant as well. Oh, was it? There's a building at the University of Michigan that's, I think it's the Hadid.
There's a few people that were on this list.
Yeah.
I went right to it. It's my kid just went there. I'll look it up and bring it to you guys, but there's a building on the University of Michigan that's, I think, a library, and it has these really great slants and material. I'll bring it to you, but you can see here that there are buildings like this one that are in Toronto, Canada, that really push the envelope on design and bring us this kind of elevated box, but artistic at the same time. I mean, depends on who's looking at it, right? Tabletop, all these different structures that we see, that you look at that and you wonder, how do these little poles like hold up all of that, right? But you have this like red piece too that's kind of a structural steel. So yeah, one of the students in my structural systems class, when I used to teach it, like studied this one and created a model. It's actually in 202 right now in the back corner. And how it held up that massive shape. Other architects here that you could use besides Zaha Hadid, but that proposed these beautiful structures, Maritime Museum in Dubai, of course. I think this one's in Dubai. Yeah. So bringing different shapes and geometry, things that are outside of norm, like I don't want to say norm, but like Gary was a part of that as well. You can see some of his influence in some of these shapes, kind of blending the architecture of the landscape. I included some of these forms to show you that we're really bringing back that organic architecture that's kind of free flowing and creative, kind of bringing back natural forms a little bit more, including these kind of pods that almost look like little cells, I suppose. uh, in China. Here, you can go to that website and take a look at it a little bit more. Any of these could be used if you wanted to work with that architect, because these are just images of things that I thought were kind of interesting. In China, there's this building that kind of sweeps down and over by the water. There are different forms, outside of the box kind of forms that are new, different. Something in New York where the facade has a lot of different angles and you see this facade, like there's an angle there's one coming out here, and there's like a reflection of what's across the street. Um, Another one in New York, just kind of like folds. Gary actually did a building like this where he folded up like an accordion, a piece of paper, and he put it up on a box, and he created a building that looked like that. But this is like slivers, like slices of walls that are turned and connected. Different skyscrapers that have kind of tested the structural integrity of like the structure itself. Like look at this one, it's kind of curving and it's twisted here. In Chicago proposed, a lot of these are proposed that might have worked. Now, this is an interesting architect that, I can't remember how to say his name, but Santiago Colorado. I knew how to say it at one time. Really beautiful architecture. It looks like this a lot. Actually, did I include? No. I visited, there's a local, museum. It's the MAM uh, in Milwaukee Museum. Somebody look that up. MAM, I think it's called. It's a museum in Milwaukee, and I should bring some pictures that I took. I took my daughter on a road trip over there. The building itself looks sort of like this, but the roof moves in the morning and at lunch, and Milwaukee Art Museum. What is it? Milwaukee Art Museum. Yes. MAM. It's cool. Milwaukee Art Museum. I went to it. It is worth the road trip, guys.
Say I've driven by it, but never been.
If you go inside, you see beautiful interiors, the whole roof. They play classical music, and when it opens, the roof kind of goes up, and then at lunch it goes down and back up. It's just like, it's a beautiful building. In fact, I'm going to look at it after this presentation. So just added these as part of researching and looking at kind of cool buildings, I could call them. The art museum, again, museums. That's why when I worked with John Hillberry in Detroit, we did a lot of museums, and we had this opportunity to really be creative. And then chairs, right? I would go through this presentation, but my daughter drove me today, and I have a an eye doctor's appointment coming up, so we're gonna a little bit earlier, but I think I'd like to go to this, and see if it's still there. Let me just do this. Oh, let me see. Copy this and let's just take a look. Still there? No. Okay, I need to take that link out of there, but just wanted to point out to you that, let me just take that. out. So don't try to use that link because unless you could probably find this. Architects design furniture. And look at all of these design furniture, right? Some of this furniture, the link brought you to the price of this furniture, and they're like $6,000 for a chair. Because it was designed by an architect. Some of it looks comfortable and some not so comfortable, but they're an integral part of the design there. And the other thing I was going to show you is Milwaukee Museum right there. Look at that. Like, wow. It's really close. We took the Chicago way all the way around, and then we took that fast ferry across from Milwaukee to Muskegon. Where's it go? Ludington kind of area. And so this is you know what, I tend to believe, I tend to go towards myself towards structures that change and move and are reactive. And I'll show you some of that as we move forward in time, but this whole roof structure right here is like it's almost like a wing, right?
It's like a sail, right?
It's like a sail, yeah, a sail or a bird or whatever you want to call it. Look at the interiors, beautiful, just beautiful. So this roof, they played classical music, like I said, and it kind of swayed. So all of these poles are all the same, like straight out, but the way that it flows, it kind of looks like it's a shape of a curve when it opens and when it's closes. So pretty beautiful. Right down here, if you look at this one, yeah, and then this one right here. Oh, in fact, that one actually shows how it's like opens, but this one has this really cool. We ate my kid and I, daughter, she's 26, had dinner at lunch down here. It looks out onto the water, so it's really beautiful. Anyway, so guys, looking at all these architects that we discovered today, think about, there it is. Okay, think about all of those different designs and influences over time, and how we've been able to embrace their different ways of looking at architecture, organic architecture, postmodernism, all those different styles. So, have fun with this. Go take a look at architects out there, decide on one of them, go through this project. Is that pretty cool? I think it's cool to like look at what architects have done over time and architecture itself. Where are we at? So go over here. And there's the presentation. This is that document where you take the architects that we've been talking about, plug it in to these questions, about 15 of those architects, which actually highlights, I think this document right here highlights what each one did and some of their quotes. That's what this is here. And then is everybody clear on what we're doing for assignment 13, which is like your architect? This is where you decide an architect, you post the architect, and then you go create a slide and you reply to yourself. So it has to be an architect that we haven't covered. And also one that someone else didn't do. So before you post anything, look through this list, make sure you refresh your screen, find an architect that you like. I mean, it's okay. We have a smaller class, so you have to like use somebody that's not in here or somebody that we said you could do, or we didn't do a whole lot about. And create this PowerPoint or Word document that will, like we did, describe, who they are a little bit, maybe find a picture of them, some of their famous architecture, and if they had a quote or something about them. So we can kind of like share our work with each other and kind of discover other architects through time. All right, any questions about what we're doing, guys? It's one of my favorites, actually, like looking at all these architects, but there are other styles that we'll be getting to. In all of my classes now, we only have so many more weeks left, like half the semester is done, so each one of my classes will have in the next week or so the rest of what we're going to do for the semester, so you have an idea of what's left. Is we're until the end of April, right? So we have about a month and a half, a few weeks, so let's do the best we can with that. Any questions about the activities of this week right here, what we're doing? All right, then, anybody online have any questions? Make sure your name is typed in there, and guys, have a great week. Yeah, I'll see you next week in this class and some of you during the week. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording because that kind of gets kind of long.